Hey there, everybody, this is Jacob Tucker from the Story Team, and welcome to the Global SF Hackathon. If you clicked on this video, it's probably because you are interested in building on Story, and so in this video, I'm going to be giving you a brief overview of our available prizes for the hackathon, what Story actually is, and at the end, we're going to do a little dive into some coding so you can get a little bit of a quick start. But of course, there's a lot more materials and videos available beyond this one that will do a better job of diving into code and stuff like that. But first of all, what is Story? Well, I'm currently reading from our documentation site, and so if you want to actually, read this instead of listening to me, you can always go to our docs instead. But Story is the world's IP blockchain. We are trying to make the legal system for intellectual property, or IP, more efficient by bringing IP on the blockchain. And so the reasoning for this is because in the current legal world for IP, it's very difficult for creators to monetize and register their IP. Oftentimes, it requires cutting one-on-one licensing deals, and a lot of times those licensing deals are only available to the big players, i.e., Disney, who are very restrictive in how they can use their IP, and more importantly, how others can build upon that IP and remix it. And if you are a creator and you want to register your IP, it's very difficult. I don't even know how I would go about that. So we're trying to make it more feasible and more efficient by putting it on the blockchain. And more importantly, in the age of AI, where there's so much content and people are creating this content directly out of their own homes. And what's happening is there's such a superabundance of content and so much IP out there and so much remixing that it's really hard to keep track of who owns what and who should be paid for their work. You can imagine that there's so many videos and content and characters and stories out there right now that other people are using, or AI are using in their training data, that they're not compensating original creators. And so we're trying to automate this process by putting it on the blockchain. And so in order to do that, we have a sort of three-layered approach. One is we have built a purpose-built blockchain for IP called Story Network. And on that blockchain, we have natively deployed our proof of creativity protocol, is what we're calling it, which is a series of smart contracts that are automating the licensing, the royalty flow, disputing of on-chain IP, and that is all through our modules, which you can see on the left side here. And if you want to dive more into those, you can absolutely do that. And also, we have something called the programmable IP license, which is essentially a license that exists off-chain in the real legal world. But we have mapped those terms on chain. So, for example, if the license has a clause for transferability, or has a clause for a commercial use of that IP, or a clause for how derivatives of that IP can be created, we have mapped those terms onto our protocol so that you can register your IP and attach license terms to your IP very easily. And so others can very easily know how they can remix your IP, and what the terms are for that IP. So how much they would have to pay for it if they wanted to use it in a commercial setting, etc. And then lastly, our amazing application ecosystem. And so if you want to dive more into the technical details of our protocol or our network, or even the programmable IP license, you should absolutely go to our documentation at docs.story.foundation. And on the left side here, we have a list of all of our major concepts that are available for you to look at. I'll briefly mention a few of them now. An IP asset is essentially a piece of IP on our protocol. So you register an NFT as a IP asset on our protocol, and that IP asset is what has the license terms attached. That is where everything really happens on our protocol. Then we have various modules like the licensing module. This is how you can create derivatives of other people's IP assets, how you can register your IP asset, etc. The royalty module automates royalty flow between parent and child IP assets. So, for example, if I have a character and you want to use my character in your story, you would register your story as a derivative of my IP asset, and then anytime your story earns revenue, I would get a cut of that if that were in my license terms. So if I said, you know what, I want 5% of all revenue that your story generates, that would automatically flow up the chain. And then the dispute module here is how we are handling on-chain disputing. So we recognize that there is so much IP out there, again, in this AI superabundance world. And so we think that the traditional legal system, i.e. courts, are not enabled or not built to handle the sheer abundance of IP and maluse. And so we are bringing disputing on chain where people can go on chain and dispute IP in that way. And so you can also check out that module as well. And then, of course, our programmable IP license, which dives into more of the legal terms that are surrounding our, our pill license, and how those terms get mapped on chain. So again, how can I commercially use your IP? Is there a minting fee to use your IP? How can I create derivatives of that IP, etc. And there's a whole backstory on how we came up with, how our legal team came up with that license, how we, used examples from the Creative Commons, the token on NFT license, and stuff like that. And then, of course, if you're a developer, you can also dive into the developer section. We have two major SDKs available for you. One is the TypeScript SDK, and one is the React SDK. And then, of course, we have tutorials and examples about building directly on our smart contracts. So if you want to check out a whole smart contract tutorial, you can also view that under the smart contract section. And then we have various tutorials available for you. How to add metadata to an IP asset, how to register IP on Story, which we'll dive into in a second here, and then other helpful resources for you to use. So that is more of the technical overview of Story. You can also go ahead and check out learn.story.foundation, which gives more less of a technical overview and more of just a conceptual overview of Story. You can absolutely check that out as well. So I want to also dive into our prize structure here. Obviously, you're probably very interested in how you can, win prizes by building on Story, and so that's what I'm going to talk about now. So we have a few prizes here. We're giving out $20,000 in total. The biggest prize is for the best overall use of the Proof of Creativity protocol. So the best example of building on Story, really. There's $10,000 in prizes available. You can see the prize structure here with first place winning $4,000. And this is again awarded to the best overall use case of you building on our protocol. We're specifically looking for projects who have thought much about IP and are using our various modules. So as you can see here, we want you to integrate with the SDK, API, or our smart contracts directly, and to use at least 2 out of 3 of our modules. So the of the licensing, royalty, and dispute modules. And we have a link here that will go to the module section of our documentation to help you out with that. The next prize we have available is $4,000 in total, with the first place winner winning $3,000. And this is for projects that are building applications around AI on Story. So whether you want to use Stability or any AI of your choice, this is a project that is really thinking about the intersection of IP and AI. So how can we license and keep track of all these pieces of content that are coming out through AI data sets, right? Or how can we even license the training data that AI programs use to build their LLMs, right? That is a big use case on Story as well. And so we also link an example application here, which is Sakai. Sakai is a storytelling platform through panels. So essentially, as you can see here, you can create short, meaningful stories in minutes. It allows you to create a story using various panels, and you can license other people's characters, environments, or even objects in their story to use your own story. And so this is a fantastic example of AI and IP coming together to build an amazing app here. In addition to that, we have Best IP-Fi application on Story. This is $4,000 in total, with the first place winner winning $3,000. And this is for projects that are building IP-Fi applications on Story. So a couple amazing use cases we've seen is the license on Story, or the license that gets attached or minted from an IP asset when you want to use that IP in your own application. So for example, again, let's say I have a character and you have a story, and you want to use my character in your story, you would mint a license token from my IP asset. And that license token is essentially your on-chain license, or your right to use my IP based on the terms that I set. Well, that license token is itself an NFT and can be bought and sold. And so we would love to see applications around the license token, right? What does it mean to create DeFi primitives from a license, right? And on top of that, we also have a few other things that work well in an IP-Fi setting. One of them is royalty tokens. So royalty tokens, if you want to, you can dive into the royalty section of our documentation. But royalty tokens are essentially tokens that give you a percentage of the total revenue that a certain IP asset is earning. So each IP asset has, I believe, 10 million royalty tokens. each giving you 0.00001% total of that revenue or something like that. And so what you can do is people or anyone can buy on the secondary market, for example, royalty tokens of an IP asset. So let's say an IP asset is Obi-Wan Kenobi, right, from Disney Star Wars, and I own 10,000 of those royalty tokens. Anytime Obi-Wan Kenobi is used in a licensing deal or in a commercial setting, I would get a certain percentage of that revenue because I own the rights to a certain percentage of revenue over Obi-Wan Kenobi. And those royalty tokens themselves are ERC tokens that can again be bought and sold on the secondary market, and there can be a ton of DeFi primitives around that as well. We would love to see IPFI applications story, and if you want to check out an example application, you can check out Piper X, which is the first IPFI application on Story, and they've done an awesome job so far, so you can definitely check them out. So our next prize, which is a bit smaller, has 1.5 thousand in total. This is for one project that has the most creative use case. So outside of the more typical AI IPFI application, we're looking for a very creative use case of Story, right? What does it mean to maybe register other types of IP, or however you want to? I don't want to talk too much about it because otherwise it wouldn't be too unique or creative at that point. But again, would love to see a creative use case of our protocol. And then our last one here, we have $500 for the team who gives the best developer feedback. However, we will be giving prizes to every single team who submits developer feedback. So if you submit feedback about building on Story, it can be negative, it can be positive, about our documentation, about our tutorials, about anything at all, about our concepts. If something doesn't make sense, we would love for you to submit developer feedback in the form of a Google document. So when you submit your project, please also attach a Google document that contains information about, or contains feedback about building on Story. And again, every single project who submits feedback will earn some sort of a prize, but the best developer feedback will win $500. So that concludes this part of the video. In the next part of the video, I'm going to be building on Story and showing you how to register IP using the TypeScript SDK. But before we get to that part, I just want to say I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you and building with all of you. Me and a lot of our team will be on the floor building with you at ETHGlobal. So can't wait to meet you, and hope you build some awesome things on Story. And lastly, we will be having an event at Story HQ, our office, after the ETHGlobal Hackathon is over. So if you're building on Story and want to continue building on Story even after ETHGlobal, come meet one of us on the floor building at ETHGlobal, and we'd be happy to send you an invite to Story HQ. So enjoy the next part of the video, and good luck. So before we jump into this video, I just want to quickly mention that this tutorial is a written tutorial that I'm going to be following, that it lives on our documentation. That written tutorial also, as you can see, includes a completed code example of everything we're going to cover in this video. So if you just want to jump there and copy and paste into your code, go ahead and do that if it's faster for you. And so we're going to be using Story in this video to register our IP on the blockchain. So I'm just going to quickly, before we jump into the code, read through this explanation here. So let's say you have some off-chain IP, example, a book, a character, a drawing, etc. In order to register that IP on Story, which is again a L1 purpose-built blockchain, you first need to mint an NFT to represent that IP. So you will have to have some NFT in order to then register it on Story. Now, if you don't have an NFT, that is perfectly fine. We're going to be walking through that in this video. But once you have an NFT, you're then going to register that NFT on Story, turning it into what's called an IP asset. Now, an IP asset on Story is sort of what it seems like. It's a piece of IP that has been registered on Story, or more specifically, an NFT that has been registered on Story, becoming an IP asset, which is a piece of IP that has a bunch of superpowers with it. And those superpowers are basically modules. We have a bunch of modules. You can see on the left-hand side here in our documentation, we have the licensing module, royalty module, dispute module, grouping module, and a bunch of other modules to come. And again, these are like superpowers on your IP. They enable your IP to do certain things. So for example, the licensing module allows you to not only register your IP, but also register derivatives of that IP, to track, the ancestors all on chain. And when you do that, that also enables the royalty module, which enables automatic royalty flow between parent and child IPs. So let's say you have some parent, let's say a character that gets used in another story. if that story were to receive revenue, it would automatically flow to the parent IP, i.e. that character. So there is automatic, royalty flow. The dispute module being on-chain disputes of wrongfully registered IP or malicious IP, etc. So we're going to cover basically in this video minting an NFT and then registering it as an IP asset. So anyways, just to go back to this explanation here, that is two transactions. One is minting an NFT, right? Or if you already have an NFT, then you've covered that. And then registering that NFT as an IP asset. So to make things easy, we actually provide a function that we're going to show in this video that combines these two operations called mint and register IP asset with pill terms, again, which we will see below. This function not only mints an NFT for you, but also registers it and then allows you to set certain license terms on that piece of IP, which means, how can others use my IP? So if I want others to just be able to remix it, create derivatives of it, we could put non-commercial social remixing, terms on that IP, or we could put certain commercial terms on that IP, which says, if you want to use my IP in a commercial setting, you have to pay me 5 USDC or something like that, or 10 IP or something like that, And then lastly, we will set metadata on that NFT and IP so that it properly displays on our Explorer and other apps in the Story ecosystem. So what I have here on my screen is Cursor. I'm using Cursor instead of VS Code. Cursor is kind of like the AI, superpower VS Code, which I've been really loving recently. And all I have here is a empty TypeScript file. Now I have a bunch of other stuff on the left here, but we will walk through that in this video. Okay, so let's just follow the before you start steps. So we're going to add our private key to our .env file. Now I already have my .env file here. I'm not going to show it for this video, but there is a .env.example to show you everything you need to fill in. So you would put your wallet's private key in your .env file. Moving on, we're also going to add our Pinata JSON web token to our .env file. Pinata is what I'm using to upload files to IPFS, which we will be doing in this video. So grab your Pinata JWT and paste that into your .env as well. Third, we're going to be using, this basic, the public default RPC provider URL, which is just testnet.storyrpc.io. You can also check out a list of any other RPC URLs you want in our documentation under the Story Network Guide. However, again, I'm just going to use the public default one. And then lastly, we're going to install the dependencies, which I've already done, but you would just paste this into your, package JSON. We're going to be using the Story Protocol TypeScript SDK, otherwise known as the Core SDK, the Pinata SDK to upload files to IPFS, and then VM just for, basic blockchain interactions. So once you've done all that setup, we're going to now set up our Story config. So what I'm going to do is copy this into our application here. So I'm going to go to my metadata example and copy this in here. Now we're going to move our imports to the top of the file here, and then we should be all set up. All right, so all we've done so far, and I'm going to increase the font here so you can see it, is we've set our private key inside of our .env. And then what we're going to do is take that private key and convert it to an account, which we will need for our Story config. So again, we've taken our private key here, we're converting it to an account in these two steps, and then we're going to initialize the Story config. So the Story config, we need an account to actually run transactions, and then we need to specify the transport HTTP RPC URL. This is also coming from our .env file that we just set up. And then we're going to be using Iliad in this video. If you're watching this in the future, this may be Odyssey testnet, or this may be even mainnet if you're watching this way in the future. But for now, Iliad is the currently live testnet that we have going on at Story. And then we're going to use this config to initialize our client by saying story client.new client, and then we're going to pass in our config here. All right, so that is all good and done. Now that we've set up our Story config, and also, by the way, for each of these sections, there is an associated doc so you can check out if you want further explanation on these steps, but it should be pretty straightforward. So in this next step here, we're going to initialize our IP metadata. Now, instead of copy and pasting this, I'm actually going to walk us through this directly because I think it's maybe better to slow down a bit here. But what we're going to do is we're going to say const IP metadata. And for the reason that we're doing this is because we want to set proper metadata on our IP asset when we register it. So that's why we're doing this step right now. So IP metadata equals client, which we just set up. dot IP asset dot generate IP metadata. And so you'll see a little suggestion here, actually, which I love that cursor does. But we're going to pass in here, we're going to pass in the title, which is going to be we'll just say, my IP asset. Then we're also going to pass in a description, which is like, this is my IP asset. We will also pass in out a watermark image, which for this video, I'm going to use a website that just passes in example images. If we paste this in, this is pixum.photos. We can actually go to our browser and I'll show you. It's a really cool website where every time you paste it in, it gives you a different random image. Great for testing purposes. So that's what I'm going to be using for this video. So I'm going to paste that in there, and then I'm also going to pass in some attributes. These attributes are basically an array here, where you can pass in a object that just has, key, let's just say rarity, rarity, and then the value, we will just say it's a legendary IP asset. And this should be attributes. Now, there's actually a whole list of this. There's a whole documentation that will walk you through this. It's the IPA metadata standard. So if you click on that link in the tutorial, you'll see this actually brings you to an entire table of different attributes that you can pass in. So we use a title, description, we used a watermark image, and we also use attributes. There's a bunch of other stuff here that you can pass in. And this function, generate IP metadata, will help you to generate that whole list of attributes automatically, but you can specify a certain couple in here. And if you want to, you can also, which I will paste in here as well, you can also import the IP metadata type and specify that right here. And this will just give you a better idea of the type that is expected for this object. So there is our IP metadata. And again, we will be using this when we register our IP asset. So the next step, which is also pretty straightforward, is the NFT metadata. This follows the basic ERC 721 metadata standard. So because this is very straightforward, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this into our application. This is just, again, NFT metadata that you are used to if you've ever, worked with NFTs in the blockchain space. Just a name, description, and image. For the name, I'm just going to say test NFT. The description, this is a test NFT. And then image is another random photo. Now, again, you may be wondering, what is the difference between the NFT and the IP? To answer that question, you can, again, go back and check out that IPA metadata standard, which provides explanation for this. But essentially, NFT metadata is not as important. It's just basic information about the NFT. Again, you can provide test info here. For the IP metadata, that's where you can be more specific about your title. So again, is this a book? What's the title of the book? What's the description of the book? An image of the book maybe, and then attributes of that book. You can dive much more into the details there. And then to make things simple, you can just, copy those things for the NFT side. Okay. So once we've done that, we're now going to upload our IP and NFT metadata to IPFS. Now, this is a function here to upload JSON data to IPFS. We can see in my application, I already have that under utils upload to IPFS. I already have this code here just because this video is not meant to be a tutorial on how to upload to IPFS. But that code is here and copy and pasteable for you. So that is what is right here, okay? Awesome. So now that we have done that, let's go back to our application here, and we're going to use this in our code now. So again, we're going to take this code here. Actually, you know what? I will type this out because I think it's maybe better for us to just do it together. So I'm going to say const IP IPFS hash equals await upload JSON to IPFS, and we're going to pass in our metadata there. We're also going to import this into our file. Awesome. So this will upload this JSON to IPFS and then provide us with an IPFS hash here. Now we're going to also say const IP hash equals create hash. And then I'm just going to click enter here. So this is SHA-256. We're just going to basically hash this object here. And we can also import this like that. And that's going to import it from the crypto library, which should be already installed. Okay, so that's for our IP metadata. We're going to do the same for our NFT metadata. So we're going to just say const NFT IPFS hash. And I love the cursor automatically does this for you. You should definitely use cursor if you're not already. We're going to upload our NFT metadata to IPFS. And then we're also going to, and I'm going to delete this because we're not ready for this part yet. But then we're also going to convert, the NFT object to a hash as well. Okay, great. So now that we've done that, we're actually ready to register our IP, which is insane that we're already there. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we're on step 5. Now there's two options for step 5. Either A, you already have an NFT minted, which we're not going to cover in this video, but it's, again, very straightforward. And if you already have an NFT minted, or let's say you have a custom NFT contract that you want to use, you would go through step 5A. So you would basically just use this register function. Again, you can literally just copy and paste this into your app instead. This is, again, if you already have an NFT minted and it's your own custom contract. So let's say you have your own NFT contract address. You would put that in your .env file. The token ID of that NFT you could also put in your .env file. And then this would register that using the metadata that we just set, okay? So you can go through 5A if you want. But this video is going to cover you don't have an NFT and you want to have a single function that will mint and register the NFT in the same step. So we're going to skip to 5B here. Okay, great. So now that we're at step 5B, what we're going to say is in order to use this function, in order to use, I'll scroll down a bit here, in order to use the mint and register IP asset with pill terms, we actually need to create a SBG NFT collection. Now this may be a bit confusing, but essentially the SBG on Story, and if you want to check out more documentation on the SBG, by the way, before I dive into this, check out the SBG section. But the SBG is basically a periphery or utility smart contract on Story that allows you to combine multiple operations into one. So registering or minting an NFT and registering an NFT are two separate transactions usually. But the SBG is a utility contract that allows us to combine them into one transaction, namely in the mint and register IP asset with pill terms function. So in order for the SBG to, mint and register an NFT in the same transaction, you need to create a SBG NFT collection first. So there's two ways to do this. Either A, you can implement your own contract and just make sure that it inherits the iSBG NFT interface, or we can use the SDK one time to create a new SBG NFT collection, and then we'll never have to do it again, which is very helpful. So we're going to quickly take a break from the metadata example and go to this script, which is create SBG NFT collection, which is just a basic script. Where just like the metadata example, well, actually, I'll make this very similar to our metadata example, so it's maybe a bit easier to understand. Where we basically set up a private key, an account, we initialize the story config, the client, all the same. The only thing that we haven't covered in this video is we're going to create a new collection here. So I will show you how to do that right now. So all we would say is, and actually I'll just get rid of all the comments here just so that it's a lot easier to look at, I guess. What we will say is const new collection equals await client.nft client.create NFT collection. All right. And in here, we're just going to pass a few things. One is the name, which is we'll just say test NFT. The symbol, which we will just say is test. And then we're also going to pass in transaction options, which we will just say wait for transaction is true. This way we can get some return values from this function. Okay. So, this should be create NFT collection. Sorry, not create SVG collection. And then we're going to console log some of the information here. Okay. And we have to also add this parenthesis. So again, this is just going to deploy a new SPG NFT contract where the name is test NFT, the symbol is test. And just remember again, if you want to implement your own, you can always do that and implement the iNFT or iSPG NFT interface. But for this video, it's a lot easier just to use the SDK to do that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I've already configured my package JSON to just run this script if I paste in this command. So I'm just going to, in my terminal, say npm run create SVG collection, and that's going to quickly run this script. And we should see in the output, let me actually increase the font here, that it logs the new NFT contract address right here. So what I'm going to do is quickly, on a separate screen here, I'm going to add that to my .env file and go back here. Okay, great. So then I have now added that NFT contract address to my .env file, okay? So I'm going to go back to my metadata example, and we're going to actually go back to the tutorial as well. And so we've already done this step now, which is awesome. And again, we only have to do this one time. So once we have our SPG NFT collection, we should be able to use the mint and register IP asset with pill terms function as many times as we need. So it's pretty convenient. And again, you would just have to set that NFT contract address you get in your terminal to your .env file. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go back to our tutorial here. And we're going to now do what we've all been waiting for, which is mint and register an NFT as an IP asset. So we're going to say const response equals await client.ip asset dot mint and register IP asset register IP asset with pill terms. Open up a function here, and this should say mint and register. Oops, mint and register. All right. And so in here, we're going to pass our NFT contract, which is just our process.env .nft contract address as address, right? This should be NFT contract. All right. And then we're going to say pill type, which again, before, or I'll explain this in a second after I said it. And actually, we should just import pill type here. All right, cool. Non-commercial remix. Oops, non-commercial remix. And what this part is, the pill type is, again, the license terms that we want to add to our IP asset. So if we want to, we could go to the programmable IP license tab on the left of our docs and go to pill flavors. You can see the three options here. One is non-commercial social remixing. This gives us the ability for others to remix this work, distribute the remix everywhere. They have to credit us appropriately. And you can see all the different terms here. If we wanted them to use it in their commercial use, they could. Commercial remix. You can check out all the terms here. But for this video, we're using non-commercial social remixing, which basically just says, you know what, you can use this anywhere you want, but just not commercially. So let's go back to our tutorial here. Scroll down to 5B. And okay, now we're back. So now what we're going to do is set all the metadata that we described earlier. So we're going to say, okay, the IP metadata, there is four things. One is the IP metadata URI, which is just your whatever IPFS link you want to use. I like using ipfs.io/IPFS, and then we're going to pass in our IP hash here. Or actually, this should be IPFS hash here, the hash we get from uploading to IPFS. Then we're going to say IP metadata hash, and that's literally just the, actually we should say OX and then IP hash here, just to properly format it. So again, this is just the hash of the object. And then we're going to do the same thing for the NFT side. So NFT metadata URI, and this is, again, the IPFS.io, NFT IPFS hash here, and then the NFT metadata hash, which is just the NFT hash, all right? And then lastly, we're just going to set transaction options, which just says, you know what, wait for the transaction to end. That way we can get some results from this transaction. And then I'm going to go to our tutorial here and copy the two console logs just so that we can get some output here. And hopefully this should all work. Oh, and this should also actually say response. So I will change that in the tutorial so that is fixed, okay? So again, I have configured this to run if I run the metadata script here. So let's just say npm run metadata, and hopefully all should work. So it's going to mint a NFT and then register it as IP if everything works, and also upload all of our metadata to IPFS in the process. So let us see if this goes through. And it does. So it says the root IPA was created at this transaction hash. This is the IPA or IP asset ID of that IPA. And then it also gives us a link to view this on the Explorer. So let's go ahead and open this link, and hopefully everything should work. So we open the Explorer here, and it may take a second to actually load the metadata. So we might have to refresh the page a few times. So I'm going to try to refresh the page a few times here and see if it goes through. And it does. So we can see test NFT here. We can see the image that it registered. We can see the IP details. So if we go ahead and click on the IP metadata URI here, which is what we set, we can actually view this on IPFS. We can see all of our metadata that we set right here in IPFS. And you can also see that even though we only specified title, description, watermark, image, and attributes, we should also see relationships, created at, media, creators. This is because we use the generate IP metadata function, which automatically formats all of our metadata or IP metadata. And if you also want to see, we can go to NFT details. We can see the NFT metadata URI here. And if we click on view metadata, this is the NFT's metadata, right? And so this is actually what this image is coming from. And we can see that because if we take, this will generate a random photo, but you get the idea. So really awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who watched this video and is interested in building on Story. I would love for you to come check us out at ETHGlobal. We will be on the floor building with all of you until the hackathon ends. So please stop by, ask some questions, and I'll see you there. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a good one.